Hey YouTube, it's Eric. I got George Widger with me today, and uh, and if you guys, if the last stream I did with George was on September 16th, 2021. I got it here on my backup channel, but this video was censored twice off of my main channel, and as a result, I was dealing with some two YouTube strikes here the last 3 months. So that's why I hadn't been live streaming as frequently because the censorship is insane nowadays. You're not allowed to go against the infallible orthodoxy that the Roman medical establishment parrots. So this video here, I recommend you guys check this out. This is on my Eric 77 number 2. You see here the title "Discussing Jesuit Imperialism with George Widger." An hour and a half stream will probably be roughly around the same time today. So I recommend you guys check that out. George is a fantastic researcher. I always enjoy having him on the show with us. And if you guys aren't aware, the word censor, and I say we're seeing all the censorship now today in society, but the word censor actually goes back to ancient Rome. Like most of the things in the society, all roads lead to Rome. But you see a censor or the censor at any time, there were two, was a magistrate in ancient Rome who was responsible for maintaining the census, supervising public morality, and overseeing certain aspects of the government finances. The power of the censor was absolute. That's dictatorial power or having infallible power. And we're going to show the video here soon of Jesuit medical inquisitor Anthony Fauci, who has claimed himself to be infallible, like the Pope, where he said that when you criticize science, when you criticize me, you criticize science. And that's why Robert Kennedy Jr., RFK Jr., was spot on when he referred to Anthony Fauci as being like a Pope. Yeah, we're going to show that video of Fauci receiving an award from the Jesuits that took place May 20th, 2021. We'll show that after here. We see here the power of the censor was absolute. No magistrate could oppose his decisions, and only another censor who succeeded him could cancel those decisions. The censor's regulation of public morality is the origin of the modern meaning of the word censor and censorship. There's kind of an interesting hidden fact there. You see in ancient Rome, and you see the logo of the SPQR. That's essentially now like the logo of our modern day United Nations. Again, the Roman Empire had never collapsed, and I'd say it's stronger than ever today. But George, do you want to go into some of that history, what you were saying before we went live with the word censor and how
Well,
Roman?
okay. This might sound somewhat redundant. So, if you think about this, we're talking about the Roman position, the censor, in Latin, censor. And as you said, he was in charge of the census. That means he was responsible for the reckoning of the population of the whole Roman Empire. And of course, he had subordinates inside the diocese because the Roman Empire was divided into districts or administrative zones, which is why the Catholic Church today is also organized into archdiocese, which is multiple dioceses, and dioceses. A bishop is in charge of a diocese, and an archbishop is in charge of an archdiocese. Now, when now this is something I found out a couple of years ago by talking to somebody, a Catholic. He said, when somebody becomes the prelate, a bishop of a diocese or an archbishop of archdiocese, he receives a reckoning. That means, I guess, his various laymen will give him the balance sheet of how much money the diocese has. What are all the resources and assets the diocese have? How many parishioners they have? How many churches? How many schools? How many seminarians? Things like that. But they want to know how many people live in the diocese, Catholic or otherwise. And of course, they want to know how many have died, how many have moved out of the diocese, how many have got married, how many have converted. So they have meticulous records. This is in the United States and throughout the world. So you could say one of the jobs of the bishop, now he will usually delegate this to laymen, but is to do a census of the diocese. Now, I know that may sound tangential, but they want to know all the resources, all the assets they have. As I said, they want to know.
I would say they're inventorying like the Earth or the parts of the Earth that are under their control at that point.
Well, yes, but they also, when I was talking to a Catholic layman, this is like 2 years ago, he said they want to know. Say, I live in the Santa Rosa, California diocese, which is part of the San Francisco Archdiocese. Um, so the current bishop of Catholic bishop of Santa Rosa, California, is Robert Francis Vassa, who's a Catholic who was a Catholic parish priest, but he got his law degree from St. Gregory Pontifical Academy. He got his law degree in canonical law, for what it's worth. So he took over here in 2011. I don't know the precise date. So he basically spent his first several days just going over the basic stats of the diocese. How many people live here? How many Catholics? How many non-Catholics? How many congregations do they have? How many deacons do they have? How many seminarians do they have? Uh, Also, they got a list of all the mayors, all the city council members, all the board of supervisors, all the police chiefs, all the sheriffs. What? So they basically, how many non-Catholic churches are in the diocese? So they had a detailed itemization of all the stats. And of course, one of the things they're supposed to do every year is do a tallying and submit it to the to the archbishop. Now that would be in San Francisco, and they do this everywhere.
Well, absolutely. And this, I would say in the Roman law, like this is where like, the origination of the birth certificate comes from.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the bishop or like the magistrate in Rome would have it was to create a catalog of who are all the subjects in the empire.
Mm-hmm. Now
So
something
they have
else.
that record of reference.
Now, of course, more as the technology changes, they also want an itemization of the media resources. How many radio stations? How many TV stations? How many newspapers? Why do you think they might be interested in those?
Well, I found, George, that the Jesuits were kind of behind setting up the mass communication wave in the United States. And they
Mm-hmm.
did it through a prominent layman here at the Radio Corporation of America, which was the company that was developing all the early TVs in the United States. But his name was Frank Folsom. Have you heard that name before?
Yes, I know you've done a video, at least one video, but was he involved with General? Was it Sarnoff? David Sarnoff?
Yeah, David Sarnoff. Actually, here's a photo of them together here. Frank Folsom and David Sarnoff with the RCA's CT100, the world's first color television. David Sarnoff, I found, received the Sword of Loyola Award from Loyola Chicago University in 1967. So that's probably the Jesuits congratulating him on being doing like the bidding of the order. They don't give awards to guys that resist the Jesuits. And then here's Frank Folsom here on the left. And this guy, I'll just read some of his connections here, George. But this guy was like over the top Vatican connections. Like we're talking like triple Jesuit educated, was a permanent representative to the Holy See. So you see here, he went to Catholic Manhattan College, went to Jesuit Fordham University, then went to the Jesuit University of San Francisco. He's a permanent representative of the Holy See. He also served as the United States representative he served as representative from the Holy See to the International Atomic Energy Agency. He was also a member of the Bohemian Club. He served as director at Coca-Cola Bottling Company, the John McGuire Company, NBC, because at this time, NBC, National Broadcasting Company, was a subsidiary of the Radio Corporation of America, or the Roman Catholic Airwaves. He was also affiliated with General Cable Corporation, Crown Cork and Seal, Tishman International. You see, he was even on at the Everglades Club of Palm Beach, Augusta National Golf Club. But here on his New York Times obituary, we see here that he was also he had 3 or 4 papal knighthoods. You see, here's the article. I recommend everyone check this out. Frank Folsom, head of RCA during early rise of TV. That's TV. During the early rise of TV. This is when mass television communications were kicking off. So here's former President Frank Folsom, former president of the Radio Corporation of America. And I know Frank Folsom, he's actually mentioned in the great book, The American Pope, the biographical book on Cardinal Francis Spellman of New York, Archbishop of New York. Where it said that Frank Folsom was kind of like an envoy to Spellman in that book. You see here during his presidency, he was president of RCA from 1949 to 57. Gross income of the corporation rose from $397.2 million to $1.1 billion a year. The rise was attributed in large measure to Folsom's application of his merchandising skills in the sale of television sets. We see here he was also the University of Notre Dame established a scholarship, Catholic Notre Dame, called the Frank Folsom Scholarship in 1952, which is interesting. And here are some of the papal knighthood that got him on the screen. Mr. Folsom was a papal chamberlain of the Cape and Sword. That's a very kind of distinguished. That's higher up than the Knights of Malta. You see, he was a Knight of Malta. We'll see. He was a Knight of the Grand Cross and a Knight of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. He was a trustee at Catholic Charities of New York and of Catholic Relief Services, as well as a trustee of the National Jewish Hospital in Denver. In 1968, 1 year after Sarnov received his Sword of Loyola, General Sarnov also worked at the Radio Corporation of America. In March 68, Pope Paul VI appointed Mr. Folsom an honorary consultor of the state of Vatican City, the only American so honored. So I think we can see, George, why this guy's not brought up a lot. Because it shows, the papal hand. And even it says right here on the article, like the subheading of the New York Times article, merchandise expert, that being Folsom, sparred expansion of industry, held papal honor. It even says that right there, held papal honor.
Well, have you? I'm not sure if we talked about this, but have you read or heard of Sean Wilcox's Jesuit Hollywood?
Oh, I have actually. That's that book here. If people go on my archive.org, I think I have a digital PDF of that book that people could read. Type in Jesuit Hollywood on the sidebar. Yeah, right here, Sean Wilcox. Yeah, subtitled "How the Papacy and its Jesuits Controlled Hollywood for Decades and Have Continued to Influence It Ever Since." Yeah, that's a great book right there.
Well, he was dealing Wilcox was dealing primarily with the film industry, so he didn't talk about Sarnoff or Folsom. However, I'm sure if he did a follow-up, he should have done like the Jesuits and the small screen, or the Jesuits in television. I mean, it's just like that would be an intriguing read. Here in America, we've traditionally had three television networks: ABC, American Broadcast Corporation, not to be confused with the Australian Broadcast Corporation; NBC, which you mentioned, the National Broadcast Corporation; and CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System. Well, one of the first heads of CBS from 1945 to 1975 was William Paley. Paley lived from 1903 to 1990. I don't recall his dates. Among other things, Paley was the son-in-law of William Randolph Hearst. Also, from 1942 to 45, he was the U.S. Army. He was the U.S. director of psychological warfare in London. He was a colonel in the U.S. Army. So after the war, World War II, Paley, as I said, was the chairman of CBS. So under his watch, from 1945 to 75, you had all sorts of popular TV shows on CBS. One of which was Gunsmoke, which ran from 1955 to 75, starring James Arness. I Love Lucy, I believe The Honeymooners. Well, one of the ideas that Paley was credited with implementing was something called the laugh track. This is something that was used in comedies. That when one of the characters says something that was supposed to be funny, you had this canned laughter in the background. Hence the name laugh track. So as I said,
I liken that to kind of like Jesuit Goebbels like propaganda. It's all designed to like make you laugh. Like when something's not funny, it's trying to make you laugh at something that's not funny.
but
It's
but
programming you in a way.
okay, so if you don't laugh at a scene, at a joke, or somebody falls or whatever, or slips on a banana peel, whatever, hey, is there something wrong with me? Of course, you're going to say, oh, yes, because you hear this thing on the television, people laughing. I should laugh because, after all, that's supposed to be funny. So, and they do this with other things, such as if you see a puppy, or you're supposed to say "aw," or you see a couple kissing, "ooh," or something like that. Uh, this is designed to manipulate people's emotions. And if you can control people's emotions, you can control their thinking. If you can control their thinking, you can control their behavior.
Well, so the Jesuits are very aware of that. You control the heart and the mind.
Uh, so, and of course, have you ever wondered why they call it programming? You wonder why they call it a newscast with newscasters? Why do they call it broadcasting? One of the lines is, when something's interrupted, we return to a regularly scheduled program. Hmm. And
Well, I'm sure we brought this up before, George, but a Jesuit priest is credited with inventing modern broadcasting or the projection reel, being the Jesuit of 1,000 arts, as they call him, Anastasius Kircher, S.J., a member of the
mhm.
Rosicrucian secret society as well.
So you had to wonder, not to make this supernatural, but gee, do you think he could have been a warlock? I'm only half joking when I say that.
Well, I think Kircher was up to a bunch of occult stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if he was trying to invoke, certain spirits, kind of like the Goetia and stuff like that.
Now, speaking of, Kirchner was 17th century, so you're talking 400 years ago. Um, but gee, do you think Anthony Fauci could be a warlock? That's a serious question.
Oh, Joe, perfect segue, George. Absolutely. Anthony Fauci is a Jesuit warlock. Good description of him. And, he was awarded by the Jesuits May 20th, 2021 for him like being such a great inquisitor for the Pope. And again, he's infallible now. Fauci is just like the Pope. Like he is science. You can't criticize him, because if you criticize Fauci, you're criticizing science.
Well, he did.
Supposedly.
Well, he basically, I heard him say that a couple weeks ago in an interview. He said, it is, book and act. He said, if you criticize Tony Fauci, you're criticizing science.
And I'm saying, I think that's very significant, because he's actually equating himself as being like infallible, like the Pope. And at the First Vatican Council in 1870, it was officially decreed in Vatican canon law, or codified, that the Pope is infallible, meaning that he cannot err.
Mm-hmm. No,
That's the implication of what Fauci is saying. If you criticize him, you're criticizing science. Like he's perfect. Like nothing he says could ever be wrong.
Okay, can I address something? Now, I'm 52. I'm a little bit older than you. I'm more than 25 years your senior. So I remember when I was a freshman in high school back in 1983. So you're talking almost 40 years ago. Um, I took a general science class. And one of the first things we did is we did a study, and this is on topic. We did a study on probability. So we broke into groups of like 3 or 4 people, and we had to flip pennies, and we had to make a certain. We made observations, and we made a hypothesis to say that if you flip a penny 10 times, 5 times it would be heads, and 5 times it would be tails. And I remember the first time we did this, it was like heads 7 times. So, gee, could you extrapolate that you have a 70% chance of flipping a penny, it would turn out heads? Well, we realized we had sampling error, even though we didn't know the nomenclature at the time. So we decided to flip it an additional 90 times. So the numbers were something like, out of 90 flips, or sorry, 100 flips, it turned out to be heads 55 times. So we extrapolated, the more times you flip it, the closer it's going to get to 50-50. So we did an experiment. We isolated the variables. we recorded our observations. So we were introduced to what was called the scientific method. Now, contrary to popular belief, I'm not anti-science. I'm very pro-science. However, what I am averse to is Jesuitical pseudoscience.
Well, that's what Fauci is doing. Essentially, whatever he pontificates is the scientific consensus, which
Now,
is bypassing the scientific method that you just described.
now, more to the point, I think I brought this up before. This was probably like 2 years ago. Thanks largely to the so-called Enlightenment of the 18th century, which we more accurately called the Darkening. Uh, Most of the ideas that we consider to be scientific are not scientific. They're in fact based on Greco-Roman philosophy and mythology. So you're talking about Greco-Roman philosophy that's been given the tenuous veneer of science, because you have people in white lab coats and have a bunch of letters behind their names who are using this stuff.
Well, absolutely. I know that's been admitted by many prominent scientists that quantum theory, like a lot of it even goes back to like Kabbalistic philosophy
Mm-hmm.
as well. And of course, we know the Big Bang theory was penned, or the idea of it came from a Jesuit priest or a Belgian Catholic priest who was educated by the Jesuits, George Lemaitre.
Mm-hmm. And of course, but they use
Einstein.
well, yes, they use Einstein as the Freemasonic Jewish Albert Einstein as their frontman. However, he went to Catholic. Einstein was born in Bavaria, 1876, I believe, March the 14th. But he went to Catholic schools. So
Well, that
he was
makes sense. Bavaria is the most Catholic part of Germany, and that's why the Nazis naturally originated from Bavaria, because it being the most
Mhm.
Catholic part of the country.
now now Einstein was considered to be one of the brilliant scientists of his day. Well, the medical version of Einstein was Sigmund Freud. He got I believe, his undergrad degree from University of Vienna, University Wien. So he himself was a complete puppet of the Jesuits.
Absolutely. So was his nephew, the prominent, actually known as the father of public relations in psychology, Edward Bernays, nephew of Sigmund Freud. I read out in the video I did titled "Netflix equals Romeflix." I read out quotes from Bernays himself, where he talks about how he went to the Vatican to study their propaganda operations in the year 1957.
Okay, and
Bernays, he was also employed by the CIA, the Catholic Intelligence Agency, Catholics in Action. So he was an operative of the Jesuits, and if people read his book Propaganda, the very first page of the book, he said that there's like an invisible shadow government which kind of rules over our democratic society, and he's referring to the Jesuits there, kind of in coded language. He doesn't come out openly and say it, but that's clearly who he's referring to.
well, it's interesting. We've talked at great lengths about Anthony Stephen Fauci, and he has a number of detractors from so-called conservatives like Rand Paul, the YouTube sites like Mark Dice,
Yeah,
Net.
Tucker Carlson.
Yes, yes, they'll say that Fauci is part of the deep state or whatever that is, but they conveniently fail to mention his educational background or that of his wife. Hmm. Uh, that's just I'm sure eventually, if they do enough videos, they'll get to that.
Well, no, George, and speaking on that, I have the video here people can see my screen. I've had this screen shared for a few minutes now from the JesuitUSAEast.org website. You can see here, they have this press release here, the USA East Ignatian year. And that's the thing, the year 2021 is an Ignatian year. So that's probably why we're seeing freedom being destroyed all across the world. A celebration honoring senior Jesuits. So Anthony Fauci was honored along with senior Jesuits. Further credence to, I think, that Fauci is a total lay Jesuit himself, and that's why I've been referring to him as Tony Fauci SJ in writings and in my video titles. Here's the
Well,
video, but George, we're gonna play this video here because I didn't, I wasn't aware of this video. I've seen the photo of Fauci receiving this award. Here's the Jesuit East Twitter account tweeting this. You see Dr. Anthony Fauci and his wife, Dr. Christine Grady, received the Ad Morgium Del Gloriam Award, that being the motto of the Jesuit order. Ad Morgium Del Gloriam. It's also the motto of the 32nd degree of Scottish Rite Freemasonry. From the Jesuits East last month for their decades-long impact on public health. So there's the tweet of it here. But yeah, George, we'll play the video because again, I was not aware of this video. I'm sure not a lot of the viewers have seen this video, and this is this is clear evidence. Like you said, all of the controlled opposition characters out there that criticize Fauci never bring up. And again, like his Vatican connections are out in the open for everyone to see. Fauci was literally the lead speaker, the introductory speaker at the 2021 Vatican Health Conference that had all of like the top officials from the world's like biomedical pharmaceutical complex speak at that event. And Fauci kicked off the event, of course. You know, he had, like you said, he went to 2 Jesuit schools. He's open about how much he admires the Jesuits. He doesn't try to hide it. I have like probably 5 or 6 videos of him on my channel praising the Jesuits on like 5 or 6 different occasions. Yeah, so we're gonna see here from the Jesuits East website. Here's the video footage of Fauci receiving the Ad Morgium Del Gloriam Award.
Yes, I am speaking of Dr. Anthony Fauci and Dr.
I'm talking right here for reference. This is the Jesuit priest talking right now.
Christine Grady, both of whom I am proud to say are Jesuit educated.
Oh, you catch that there, George?
Yes. So he said, and both Tony and Chris are Jesuit educated. I'm very proud of that. But
yeah, we'll play that one more time.
Allow me to introduce
again. This is a Jesuit priest saying this.
Them and present our AMDG Award and to introduce them to Dr. Christine Grady, both of whom I am proud to say are Jesuit educated. Allow me to introduce them and present our AMDG Award.
Well, Dr. Grady, Dr. Fauci, delighted to be with you this evening. It is a real pleasure to be able to present you with this award. I am so impressed and so grateful for your work to bring healing and hope to so many people over many years.
Yeah, did you notice that there? The Jesuit is extremely grateful for Fauci's work in destroying the U.S. economy. And terrorizing millions of people across the world. He's extremely grateful for that.
Well, and of course, just before that, I mean, in the decades prior to that, how many people did Fauci murder with AZT, or did you say AZT?
Oh, absolutely. AZT, absolutely. Yeah, that information for that is in the great book by Dr. Robert Wilner that I have on my archive.org called Deadly Deception. I know Dr. Peter Duesberg also writes about that in his book, Inventing the AIDS Virus.
Well, and of
Dr.
course,
Terry Mullis, I know, who conveniently died 74 days before Event 201 at the age 74. Event 201 being the simulated pandemic event that took place for like 2 or 3 months before the patient 0 for CV-19.
well, actually, you're talking. Well, they keep changing the dates. The original date was the outbreak was supposed to be December the 12th, 2019, but they moved it back to, I believe, November the 17th. So roughly a month after Event 201, which took place on the Friday the 18th of October, 2019, at the Waldorf Astoria in New York City, the same place where Ronald Reagan was knighted, knighted as a Knight of St. John of Jerusalem in 1984. Now, for what it's worth, the date of Reagan's knighthood was January the 10th, 1984, and I know you've shown the video of that. But
referring to his Knight of Malta knighthood?
Yes.
Oh, that was January 13th, 1989. Reagan's knighthood.
I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon.
Actually, but to George, that's significant though, because that I believe he was still in office then. So I guess that would have been like he would have only been in office for like 2 more weeks after he was knighted.
Well, actually, I believe it was a
So I
week.
think that's symbolic of the Vatican, saying, job well done, Ronald. Here's your papal knighthood. You're now a crusader for the Pope.
Well, I made a mistake on the date. I inverted the dates. It was on January the 10th, 1984, that Reagan officially reestablished diplomatic relations with the Vatican. Now, 33 years later, on January the 10th, 2017, Fauci spoke at Georgetown University, in which he stated that sometime during the Trump administration, there would be a surprise pandemic.
Well, absolutely, actually, yeah, and they even show that footage in the documentary movie Plandemic.
Mm-hmm.
They don't highlight that he was speaking at the most powerful Jesuit university in the world when he said that, but absolutely. And actually, I did a video probably a year and a half ago, probably 2 years ago now, covering Fauci's comments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was 33 years to the date after Reagan reinstituted diplomatic relations between the United States and the Vatican. And that's incredibly symbolic, I think.
Mm-hmm. No,
of course, 33. The Jesuits, historically created the modern system of Freemasonry, and it goes back to the year 1717, which is logical. The Jesuits existed over 150 years before Freemasonry came into being. So they already had the Jesuits were already a monarchy unto themselves at that point. So they had an incredible supply chain and incredible infrastructure network across the world to be able to do that. But we'll continue here. Yeah, we'll continue here. So you're seeing, so the Jesuits are extremely grateful for Fauci being an inquisitor for them. And you're seeing that here from this Jesuit priest.
Years.
So what the Fauci is going to speak himself, and Fauci will then honor the Jesuits and thank them for this award after here. We'll see.
Thank you so much, Father O'Keefe, for that very kind and gracious introduction.
Father O'Keefe. So the Jesuit O'Keefe. I'll pull up the first name of this guy.
Chris will offer her remarks in just a moment, but let me say,
I assume he's probably a family friend of the Faucis. There's probably a whole bunch of Jesuits that are family friends with the Fauci.
On behalf,
we'll see what Fauci has to say.
Of us both, how honored we really are to receive the Jesuit Ad Maiorem Dei Gloriam Award.
Oh, I was going to play that. So you see, they're incredibly honored to receive Ad Majorem Dei Gloriam Award.
Say on behalf of us both, how honored we really are to receive the Jesuit Ad Maiorem Dei Gloriam Award, which we accept truly with profound humility and gratitude. As I have recounted often, I enthusiastically immersed myself in the intellectual rigor of the Jesuit education that I had the good fortune to receive. What I did not realize at the time, though, is what a profound influence it would have on my life and my career.
See there, you see it again. He immersed himself in the mental and the rigors of a Jesuit education, and that's had a profound impact on his life.
At Regis High School, I recall how Father Stephen Duffy, my professor in Greek classics, inspired my interest in the classics and in philosophy. Later, at the College of the Holy Cross, I was fortunate to continue studies in this vein, graduating as a classics major with a pre-med concentration, something that people still to this day don't understand.
Okay, Eric, could you pause this for a second? Eric, could you pause this for a second?
The tutelage of the icon.
Oh yeah, for sure. You want to jump in?
I just want to make an observation. This is something I've noticed about Fauci just in this video. You can tell he's reading from maybe not a teleprompter, like maybe a computer screen. So this is not organic. He's not saying this is not a natural conversation. Now, granted, he's smiling, he's laughing. It's just like, what is a classic Greek education? So he's trying to make this seem natural, like he's feigning humility, but he's reading from a script. Now, granted, he could have written this himself. Who knows? So this is not a real interview. because he's not talking from off the top of his head. And he said, boy, I remember going back to Holy Cross, back late 50s, early 60s. So you're talking like 60 years ago. And I remember one of my profs there was Father Steve Duffy. And he has all the details are precise. So what's my point? So even this interview is contrived, is artificial.
Oh, absolutely. Well, they have to like. I'm sure this video would be shown in like various like Catholic churches and parishes, and like I'm sure it was broadcasted in like in the Catholic media. So they still have to prop him up as like a guy that's humble. He's here to save us all.
And
he's selfless. He's just trying to do the right thing, and
well,
they have to keep that image of him like he's a saint.
But as I said, people have made criticisms of Joe Biden, who happens to be the current papal puppet in the Father Andrew White House, and they said, "Gee, he can't even." Unlike Trump or Obama, he can't even read his teleprompter properly. But almost all of these figures, these apparatchiks like Fauci, these politicians, they're reading from a teleprompter. They're reading from cue cards. They're not engaging in natural conversations.
And George, we found the guy who invented the teleprompter had a Jesuit background in terms of education.
Yes, it was Schlafly. Was it Hugh Schlafly?
Yeah, I got him up here. I guess full name Hubert Joseph Schlafly Jr. Died on April 20th, 2011. Was an American electrical engineer who he says co-invented the teleprompter. Schlafly is credited with spearheading the movement towards satellite television also within the industry. So here again, so like this kind of ties into what we were saying earlier on the stream too with Frank Folsom and his activities with Radio Corporation of America in the 1940s and 50s to get colored TVs or just TVs in general kind of mass produced and into millions of American homes. You got Hubert Schlafly essentially did the same thing with satellite television. And then he co-invented the teleprompter, but Hubert Schlafly went to Jesuit St. Louis University High School. You see here is a Jesuit Catholic high school for boys founded in 1818. It is the oldest secondary educational institution in the U.S. west of the Mississippi River, and one of the largest private high schools in Missouri, located in the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of St. Louis. And you see here, Schlafly also got his bachelor's in electrical engineering from Roman Catholic University of Notre Dame. And this is the guy where the teleprompter comes from.
Okay.
And here's a photo of him here at the Cable Hall of Fame. Here he is being inducted, Hubert Schlafly.
Well, something I've noticed on the local level. I've sent you a number of videos of last few years from the Sonoma County Public Health Department or the Board of Supervisors, and the witch who's our public health officer or unhealth officer is named Sundari Mace, M-A-S-E. Mace isn't like a club you hit people over the head with, and she doesn't do this much anymore, but she used to do like weekly updates, and you can tell she's reading from a teleprompter. And she's saying, be sure to wear your mask, be sure to stay 6 feet apart, be sure to wash your hands, please be sure to avoid large gatherings. And if you're sick, get tested. If you're not sick, get tested. And she's basically, I know you've done videos of the unhealth officer in New South Wales. What's her name? Chant?
Oh, Dr. Carrie Chant. Yep.
Yes, Carrie. So it seems as if they're almost all reading from the same script. Now, granted, it's going to be tailored for their particular jurisdiction, New South Wales, California, or Ontario, Canada, wherever. But it seems that this is all coming from the same font.
I'd say there's a central programming or a central hub of programming that's being emanated from the Vatican and the United Nations. Essentially, the United Nations is a secular branch of the Vatican, and so is the World Health Organization. Now, the World Health Organization, actually, George, the Vatican was given permanent observer status there in 2020 or 2021.
Well,
We see here, but George, right where my fiefdom here in Ontario, I don't know if you saw this. This kind of went viral. Here I got the article from Toronto CTV News. Ontario health official responds after being caught on hot mic before COVID-19 briefing. But this was Dr. Barbara Yaffe. I haven't found any open Jesuitical backgrounds into her educational background, but I haven't looked too hard, to be honest. But I'm sure there's definitely something there. She's a total puppet. But Yaffe remarked on a hot mic, George, that she said, quote, "I don't know why I bring all these papers. I never look at them. I just say whatever they write down for me," end quote.
Well, didn't Biden make a similar quote when somebody was reporting or a reporter asked him about his executive orders, and somebody said, "Hey, Mr. President, you know what you're signing?" Nope, I was just told to sign these. Have you seen that video?
I haven't, but that made perfect sense because there's no way that Biden is capable of writing all the executive orders that he's supposedly has so far.
Well,
He's been more active than any previous president in history in terms of executive orders.
Well, there have been a number of compilation videos over the last. I said compilation, not copulation. Well, is there a difference? Compilation videos from the English-speaking world, from the UK, Canada, California, New York, New South Wales, wherever, where basically these politicians and apparatchiks, these prime ministers, these premiers, these governors, are all basically saying the same thing. Now, their language, the verbiage has changed somewhat, but they're also saying, well, this is our new normal. This is going to be our new normal until the vaccines become available. But then more recently, they said, we all need to get our shot. If you haven't got your first shot, get it. If you haven't got your second shot, get it. If you haven't got your booster, get it. This is how we're going to build back better. So you have videos of Biden, of Boris Johnson, who's a Catholic, Justin Trudeau, all saying basically the same thing.
Trudeau, another devout Catholic, Jesuit trained, and that's why there will be zero prosecutions in Canada against the Roman Catholic Church for their operations, and I would say almost like systemic genocide of the native peoples here with the residential schools. There will be zero prosecutions.
Okay.
So I'm guaranteeing you that now because Justin Trudeau is a Jesuit agent provocateur being sent out to destroy Canada, not bring democratic principles to Canada, which would call for like a serious investigation into those residential schools and indictments against various nuns and priests of the clergy. Lots of them are still alive. The schools were only closed in the 70s. Yeah, absolutely. And this reminds me of what Jesuit, lay Jesuit Herman von Rompuy said, George, the former president of the EU Commission. He said that we're all Jesuits now, and that there's a Jesuit international. That's a very significant comment when you know what Van Rompuy's position. Like he was the top brass in the European Union when he said that.
And of course, I forgot the name. One of the founders of the European Union. I'm drawing a blank, but he was trained, not Rediger, but somebody like him, was trained by the Jesuits.
So I mean, absolutely, they have like the EU is like, again, like it's the new Holy Roman Empire. It's an extension of the church.
Well, it's interesting. Okay, so I just wanted to get to at least one of my points before we sign off. I know we've been going on for 45 minutes or almost.
I'm saying, George, just continue, or just before we sign off, I want to finish this video here of Fauci.
Okay, go ahead.
And we can keep like interjecting and making comments on what he's saying.
Okay, please, why don't you just finish the video, then I'll hold off any further comments.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, we can finish it here.
Iconic Jesuit, Father Joseph Bunny Bosom. And the bunny was because we had to dissect a rabbit in his class. To this day, this broad perspective has been invaluable to me as a public health person, grappling with the medical science posed by the global pandemic of COVID-19 amid the larger issues of the health inequities and political divisiveness laid bare by the pandemic. But throughout my career, Father, Jesuit tenets have been my invaluable guide.
Oh, that's we're gonna have to replay that. You catch that there? Throughout his career, Jesuit tenets have been his invaluable guide.
It has been invaluable to me as a public health person, grappling with the medical science posed by the global pandemic of COVID-19 amid the larger issues of the health inequities and political divisiveness laid bare by the pandemic. But throughout my career, Father, Jesuit tenets have been my invaluable guide as I helped lead the global public health response to emerging infectious diseases, from AIDS to pandemic flu to Ebola to Zika and now to COVID-19. Chief among these tenets was staying faithful to the truth, even truths that may be inconvenient to some people, communicating for understanding according to the adage that I learned from the Jesuits. And everybody knows this because I tell it to all my fellows and all my students. Precision of thought and economy of expression, and emphasizing social justice and service to all. It has proven to me time and time again.
Because it was social justice when he murdered all those puppies and those freak experiments.
Okay, could I just make another observation? He was talking about this professor, Father Joseph, Bunny, something or other. So people may not have caught that. So even back late 1950s, 60 plus years ago, Fauci showed his penchant for being a bit of a sadist. So there's really no reason to kill this rabbit other than torture. Now, for what it's worth, I don't.
Oh yeah, they were doing maximum pain experiments too, where they wouldn't give him any sort of pain medication remedy.
So, of course, this is. I don't mean to get into psychology because that's a completely different discipline. But they say, whether this is true, I don't know. But they say that most of your serial killers start out by torturing other children or animals. They wet their bed, or they wet their bed for long after they should. But they like torturing dogs, cats,
Again,
rabbits.
Oh, sorry about that, George. Yeah, sorry. Keep going.
So that was how. That was partially how Fauci got conditioned. So if he can basically murder or slaughter rabbits, so what's the next thing he can move on to? Dogs, cats, people. And it's okay, what did Aquinas say? It is no sin to murder a heretic. As a matter of fact, it's a meritorious act.
Oh, absolutely, because nothing is more dangerous than the corruption of faith.
Yes. So,
and this is on that spirit of Aquinas, it makes perfect sense why Dr. Joseph Mengele, the doctor of death in Nazi Germany, was a Roman Catholic. Just
and
like Fauci. And Jesuit Fauci is, I would say, a Dr. Mengele level quack. He's literally on the Mengele level. And in Mengele, we know here, actually, this is very interesting. I don't know if you've seen this, but he was reportedly in Canada in 1949. See here, these, this is from a blog here. These photos from a yearbook published in 1949 by Hospital St. Michael Archange in Quebec City were sent to me by a friend in Ontario. I believe the man on the left in the first photo, bending down to examine a boy in a wheelchair, is Dr. Joseph Mengele, the angel of death of Auschwitz.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that here. He was known in Canada as Father Joe. Just kind of like the Pope, or he's a Catholic, So,
well,
and I don't know if you've heard of this, George, but this ties into a huge scandal that took place in Canada called the Duplessis orphan scandal, where they're essentially doing like biomedical experiments. And you see here from Wikipedia, the Duplessis orphan, and this was what the government in Quebec was working hand in hand with the Catholic Church, because the premier at the time in Quebec, Maurice Duplessis, we see him here in 1952. This guy was a devout Roman Catholic.
Okay, so You talked about Father Joe, not to be confused with Uncle Joe, Joseph Stalin. He uses Billy.
Yeah, Joe Stahl, absolutely. He was educated at by Jesuits with the Tiflis Seminary in Georgia.
No, and by the way, and not to change the subject, but speaking of another Father Joe, you did a video a while back. Was it Joseph O'Callahan, who was a chaplain? Was it on the Franklin? Um, he was known as Father Joe. And I don't recall, this was in like 1944, 45. The Japanese allegedly landed a kamikaze plane into the USS Franklin, which was an aircraft carrier. Something like a third of the crew were killed, something like 900 out of the 2,500. And O'Callahan happened to be Johnny on the spot. He was supposed to have saved like dozens of crew members. Do you remember doing this video?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. And he was given the Medal of Honor by Harry Truman in the White House. People can see that photo in the
So,
1946.
okay, this is pure speculation. So, do you think O'Callahan actually could have had a hand in the actual destruction of the Franklin?
Oh, absolutely. Well, who is the Jesuit that boarded the Titanic and then got off right before it sunk?
Oh, Brown.
Jesuit Brown. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, I think with Callahan, it's very plausible. The Jesuits have a long history of this. They're the masters of deception.
Well,
Like,
of course.
truly are the masters of deception. Like,
So
and that's why
yes,
it was Jesuits who wrote J. Edgar Hoover's book, "What Masters of Deceit." That was ghost written for him by Jesuits.
mhm.
But
And
I just want to on the Duplessis orphans, though, George. I just want to reiterate this point, just because this case, not a lot of people know about this case, even Canadians. Like, I bet over 9 in 10 Canadians have no idea what the Duplessis orphans are. If you mention that,
mhm.
this is whereas more than 20,000 Canadian children, 20,000, were wrongly certified as being mentally ill by the Roman Catholic provincial government of Quebec, again ruled by Maurice Duplessis at the time, and confined to psychiatric institutions in the 1940s and 50s. And this is they're essentially, this is like, MK Ultra type of experimentation that was going on these kids in Canada, and they were using the infrastructure of the Roman Catholic Church to do this. The Duplessis orphans have accused both the government of Quebec and the Roman Catholic Church of wrongdoing. Of course, the criminal Catholic Church has denied involvement in the allegations and disputes the claims of those seeking financial compensation. But yeah, the children were held at Catholic facilities, and a lot of the orphans came from the Catholic Church. Had a vast network of orphanages in Quebec at this time, and that's where they picked most of the children from. And so it's just very fascinating that Joseph Mengele was reportedly here in Quebec at the time this experimentation was going down. I just want to highlight that Dr. Anthony Fauci is on a Mengele level quack meter. And both of them just happen to be devout Roman Catholics. It must just be a coincidence, though, right, George, that Mengele was a Catholic like Fauci? But yeah, so actually, let me see if George. She looks like he needs to get back into the stream. But yeah, George, we'll finish here the video from Fauci, and then we'll finish off with some comments before we sign off.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, you're back. Okay, sweet. Yeah, we'll continue here with Fauci, and then we'll actually, and then I want to point out. I know we mentioned this briefly in the video. The woman we see here beside Fauci is his wife, Dr. Christine Grady, and she also she has just as much of a Jesuit background as Fauci does. She works at the NIH with Fauci. She serves as head of the Department of Bioethics at the National Institutes of Health Clinical Center. She went to Jesuit Georgetown University, went to Jesuit Boston College, and got her PhD from Jesuit Georgetown for good measure. She was recently a commissioner on the Presidential Commission for the Study of Bioethical Issues, which was created by Executive Order 13521 on November 24th, 2009 by Jesuit puppet Barack Obama. She's a member of the National Academy of Medicine, a senior fellow at the Kennedy Institute of Ethics, and a fellow at the Hastings Center in the American Academy of Nursing. She received the National Institutes of Health CEO Award in 2017 and the Director's Award from the same organization in 2015 and 2017. We see here at the bottom, Grady is married to Anthony Fauci. And you see here, and her mother was an assistant dean at Roman Catholic Seton Hall University. So the point is, so she's just as plugged in as Fauci is, and you see her. She's on the right here in this video. But we'll finish this. It's just a couple more minutes.
Simple principles are so important. So thank you again for this distinguished honor. And Christine, let me now turn it over to you.
So thank you, Father O'Keefe, and thank everyone for the honor of receiving the Ad Majorem Dei Gloriam Award, along with my life partner here, Tony Fauci. This special Ignatian year theme,
I'll just say the Popes, Bonnie and Clyde. We'll continue.
Service, hope, and inspiration, is so critical right now, more than any other time that I can remember in my lifetime. During this pandemic, it's become so apparent how vital service to and kindness to others is in our world, in our lives, both as individuals and as members of communities at every level. We look for and celebrate examples of kindness and role models for inspiration and strength as we continue to endeavor for a more caring world. My Jesuit education at both Georgetown University and Boston College gave me skills and knowledge and inspiration to allow me to dedicate my life to caring for and serving others as a nurse and as a bioethicist. My professors, many of whom were Jesuits, built upon the foundation that my parents had already created and instilled in me a passion for serving others and promoting the common good. Role models like Father Fitzgerald and Father McSorley exemplified the Jesuit.
Father McSorley, that'd be Bill Clinton's Jesuit, right?
Dick McSorley. And don't mean to be crass, Richard McSorley. But doesn't Dick McSorley sound like a Catholic venereal disease?
It
Sorry.
does, yes. You know, no, that's a well-timed joke. Just given with these two virologists we're watching speak here, and you know what, Father Richard McSorley, SJ, he after the Jesuits murdered John F. Kennedy, they made him Jackie Kennedy's confessor to make sure that she would keep her mouth shut and never mention anything about the responsibility of the Jesuits in murdering her husband.
Well, you know,
she was a good puppet, and they married her off to that Knight of Malta shipping baron Aristotle Onassis.
Yes, and so anyhow, so I did have something else to bring up. What was
I was saying, but before you jump in, but I think that's very interesting that Father Richard McSorley, Bill Clinton's Jesuit, the confessor to Jackie Kennedy, is close with Dr. Fauci and Christine Grady. She mentioned that he was a role model.
Well, you know, this is a little bit off topic, but I remember when Avery Cardinal Dulles died back in 2008. There is a story that appeared, I believe it was the New York Post. It wasn't his obituary, but they're getting some comments from people who knew Dulles. And one of them was Donald John Trump, the future U.S. president. And he said, I mean no disrespect to His Eminence, the late Eminence, Cardinal Dulles, but he was always Father Avery to me. As a matter of fact, after my dad died, he became a second dad to me. And it was actually at his behest in 1966, I transferred from Fordham to University of Pennsylvania. Also,
oh wow, no, so you'll have to send me that, George, because I know in Donald Trump's book, The Art of the Deal, he writes about that he got along with several Jesuits at Fordham University while he was there.
And later on, this is like 20 years or so, he at Dulles' behest, he would recommend his daughter Ivanka transfer from Georgetown to University of Pennsylvania. Now, even though the University of Pennsylvania, which is I believe in Philly, is a secular institution, Dulles said to young Donald, "Oh yes, I know the professors are well. You'll be in good hands."
Actually, here we got, and speaking on the Wharton School, this was posted by a great researcher who posts on my blog here, Legitimate Vast. He found a quote from the Jesuit Educational Quarterly. And we know that for terms of the University of Pennsylvania, that's where Jesuit priest James Martin was educated. The current LGBT priest, head of America Magazine.
Well, I know I haven't looked into Martin's background, but I know that he got one of his degrees from Loyola Chicago. I had to go look more into his background.
Yeah, he went to. He has a degree from the Wharton School. That's where Trump went specifically at the University of Pennsylvania. And we know historically, George, the University of Pennsylvania just happened to be the first university in America to open up a Catholic Newman Center.
Yes, I think we discussed that a couple of years ago. Now,
in terms of, George, don't mean to cut you off there, George, but I just want to read out this quote because this was just a great find. This is from the Jesuit Educational Quarterly, Volume 9, Number 2, October 1946. And it's Methods of Teaching at the Wharton School. And this was written by a Jesuit, John C. Connolly. So the article is called Methods of Teaching at the Wharton School, Jesuit John C. Connolly. John C. Connolly, S.J., writes, the Jesuit educator is inclined to be so severe in his criticism of non-Catholic institutions of learning for their materialistic brand of training that he may overlook whatever good features are to be found there. It is not my purpose to defend secular education, but I believe it would be our profit to note whatever success its institutions have attained in the educative process and to adopt their methods and techniques insofar as they are in complete accord with Catholic philosophy and aims. A case in point, to my mind, is found in the Wharton School of Finance and Commerce, the University of Pennsylvania, an institution that has attained notable success in its methods of teaching not only commercial subjects, but the social sciences as well. It came as a surprise to me a few years ago to discover that the method chiefly employed here was none other than the Jesuit contribution to educational method, daily repetition, active discussion, and pre-election. I'm just going to repeat that. So here you got a Jesuit priest here saying that the principles of the Jesuits' educational philosophies govern the Wharton School of Finance and Commerce. Jesuit John C. Connolly, S.J., says, quote, it came as a surprise to me a few years ago to discover that the method chiefly employed here, the Wharton School, was none other than the Jesuit contribution to educational method, daily repetition, active discussion, and pre-election. And we know Georgia, Warren Buffett, went here, of course, too. And here's just a list of some of the alumni that went to this Warren School. The current CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai. Donald Trump, Roman Catholic, William Brennan, Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. I believe he went. Doesn't he have a Jesuit background also?
Who is this?
William Brennan, the Supreme Court Justice.
Yes, he was a Catholic.
Catholic. Okay, he went to the Wharton School also. But that's just a very interesting source. That came from a Jesuit educational kind of journal there, that showing how the principles of the order are there at the Wharton School, and that source came from 1946. So that's tells you a lot there. That's why there's so many prominent alumni that come from that Wharton School.
Mm-hmm.
But anything you want to add on there before we finish up with Fauci?
Well, it's just like, as I said, he's been at the National Institutes of Infectious Disease since 1968, over half a century. He's been the head of it since 1984, almost 40 years, 38 years. Now, people have referred to this great medical machination, this inquisition, as several things, one of which is covert 1984. One of the obvious references is to the George Orwell, Eric Blair dystopian novel, which was written in 1948, but was published the following year. And for what it's worth, Blair was a Fabian socialist. He was a Freemason, and he was trained by the Redemptionist sisters at a convent in England. Now, he was a complete insider, but it is possible he may have released a little bit too much information. Who knows? I don't recall his precise dates, but he lived from 1903 to 1950. He died. So he died the following year after the book 1984 was written. Now, as we said before, in that year, in addition to being the same year, the name of the book, on January the 10th of that year, Ronald Reagan reestablished diplomatic relations with the Vatican. Also, that year, Anthony Fauci became the director of the National Institute of Infectious Diseases. So that is why they call this, among other things, covert 1984. Because something we've discussed before through predictive programming, movies, TV shows, books, video games, comic books, they let us know what their agenda is, what is on the docket, even though they may not roll it out for years or even decades. As we said, there's a famous clip of Anthony Fauci speaking at Georgetown University on January the 10th, 2017, 10 days before Donald Trump actually became president, in which he said, sometime during the Trump administration, there will be a surprise pandemic. This was precisely 33 years to the date that actor Ronald Reagan reestablished diplomatic relations with the Vatican. Now, there's something I need to bring up. I know we're getting a little bit short on time, and forgive me for not being more economical. I need to talk about the executive leadership of Pfizer. And do you mind if I just do that quickly?
What was saying, George? You want to do the? Let's finish this video here of Fauci. It's probably got 2 minutes left, and then we'll go into some of the Pfizer connections. And maybe I'll reference the audience to an article I just put up on my blog that I show documentation that before Pfizer got its sex drug Viagra approved, that Pfizer executives went to see Pope John Paul II at the Vatican to get his moral blessing for Viagra. And that was about 2 weeks before the FDA then approved Viagra. The FDA is totally captured, and that's why they approved the recent Pfizer jab on the anniversary date of the St. Bartholomew Day massacre.
Yeah.
And on that date, there's an article on my Jesuit World Order page that covers that. Of course, the St. Bartholomew Day massacre was the event where a Catholic mob murdered hundreds of thousands of Protestants in France. But Pfizer, their new vaccine, was approved by the FDA on the anniversary date.
Well,
it was August 23rd, 2021.
Well, actually, if I could just make some clarification, the Food and Drug Administration, or as Joe Biden calls it, the Federal Drug Administration, or you can call it the fascist drug agency, just like there's all sorts of games you can play, just like CIA, FBI, and so forth. CDC, what does that stand for? The Catholic Disease Creator. Well, as you said, on August the 23rd of this year, the FDA allegedly, and I say allegedly, gave a full approval of Pfizer. Well, actually, that's not true. They gave it extended emergency use authorization for Pfizer. What they did is they gave approval for a drug that's not available for the United States. It's called Comirnaty. So it was a complete bait and switch. Pfizer is still, all of these shots are doing experiments in the United States.
Right after that, George, you had Biden come out like the authoritarian he is, Roman Catholic Biden, and he said to the unvaccinated Americans, "Your time's up. It's been given FDA approval. No more excuses. You all have to take the poke."
Okay, well, yes. So he basically declared war on the heretics and liberals, because there are millions of Catholics, for whatever reason, just don't want to get this. But they're just liberal is just as bad as a heretic. But
John F. Kennedy proves it. They murdered one of their own, Roman Catholic John F. Kennedy. Kennedy was the Knight of Columbus too, and he still popped off his head like it was nothing.
Yeah, I wish I could be a little bit more precise with the name, but the last 2 years, since 2020, there have been something like 5 or 6 Black leaders, mostly in Africa, one in Jamaica, who died under mysterious circumstances. They're out of heart attacks, plane crashes, whatever. who, for whatever reason, were not going along with the agenda. Probably the most famous example was the president of Tanzania, John Mufufu, I believe.
Oh yes,
Who?
yeah, I've heard of this guy. Yeah, and he didn't
Okay.
he even like test like a goat or something like that? Or,
Oh, he did. He tested a can of soda, orange juice, a goat, a papaya. They all tested positive for corona. And he said, "Well, this is a bunch of uh, nonsense." He probably said something harsher than that, but he said, "There's no way, we're going to let the World Health Organization in our country. There's obviously no way we're going to let you inject us all." So he died shortly thereafter under mysterious circumstances because I guess Mufufu actually thought he was the president of Tanzania.
well, didn't they say COVID got him too? Yeah, they did. Yeah, he had not been. They say in this Reuters article, Magafu had not been public since Feb 27th, sparking rumors that he had contracted COVID.
Hmm. Hmm. So it's
So
just like,
there you go. The CV-19 HOAX got him.
okay, so in other words, he got the Kerry Mullis treatment or the Robert Woolner treatment because
Yeah,
whatever you speak,
absolutely the Kerry Mullis and the Robert Woolner treatment. Absolutely.
or you could say the Bob
Yeah,
Mendelsohn.
Robert Woolner, a very healthy guy. He's obviously the guy is a PhD in health sciences. He's very healthy, and he just mysteriously dies a year after he writes two fantastic books attacking the medical establishment.
Well, and of course, before that, you had Robert Mendelsohn, MD, who was a pediatrician from Chicago. He's probably best known for his work, Confessions of a Medical Heretic, which came out in 1979. Mendelsohn lived from 1926 to 1988, and he was a mainstream allopathic doctor. And I guess sometime during the 1970s, after being a doctor for over 20 years, he had an epiphany and he said, I'm probably doing way more harm than good. And he said, why am I doing these things? Why am I injecting these little children with these poisons? Made absolutely no sense because they're assuming that these illnesses like polio can be prevented from the shots. And he said, well, I can't find any evidence of that. And Mendelsohn did some research. He didn't have the internet back then, but he looked for the papers that said that these shots were effective against polio. Well, it turns out that it wasn't, contrary to popular belief, the alleged virus that was supposed to cause polio has never been identified. And he says it turns out there was a polio outbreak in the 1950s in the U.S. in places like Florida. That was due to DDT spraying. So it had nothing to do with the virus. And he said, wait a second. If they're wrong about that, what else have they been wrong?
Well, the CDC or the Catholic Disease Center, founded by Jesuit trained Joseph Walter Moonson, was advocating for the use of DDT in commercial products.
So,
or they're saying, they were saying that, oh yeah, there's nothing. Oh, that's safe. Just like how they were saying that smoking cigarettes is safe. Nothing's going to happen if you chain smoke.
And the CDC used to say that lead paint was safe. They basically have been wrong on just about everything. And of course, granted, this is not the CDC. This is Tony Fauci. He was saying initially back in March of 2020, people should not be wearing masks. He said people might feel a little bit better, but then almost a month later, he said not only should you be wearing one, you must wear one. And he was saying that people shouldn't wear just one. They should wear two or three or a dozen. And he's basically flip-flopped about every single position. He said, well, we probably won't need boosters. Well, if you're elderly, if you have health problems, you should get, okay, everybody should get a booster. Well, you don't have to wear a mask outside. Well, you should wear a mask outside. Well, you shouldn't have to wear a mask if you're injected. Well, you should wear a mask if you're injected. Everything. This is like saying he's engaged in so much double talk in the last 2 years and long before that. If Fauci had to give an hour-long presentation, he only had to prepare a 30-minute one. It's just like he's like,
Well, I'd say, George, he's mastered the principles of Jesuitism. And we know that Jesuitism is defined as being, quote, cunning, deceit, hypocrisy, prevarication, deceptive practices to effect a purpose. That's what Jesuitism is defined as. And all those adjectives perfectly describe the behavior of Jesuit Inquisitor Anthony Fauci, SJ, since the CV-19 pandemic began. Same pandemic that, again, we mentioned that he foreshadowed on January 10th, 2017 at Jesuit Georgetown University.
okay, so I realize that we've been going on for about 1:15. So if I could just mention the executive leadership of Pfizer.
Oh, with Pfizer, actually, before we get to that, Joe, let's quickly finish this video here, and then we'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll play.
Philosophy of service rooted in justice and love and helping people for the greater glory of God. I'm extremely grateful for the opportunities that I have, and I try hard to pay forward by instilling in my own daughters, our own daughters, and in the students that I have had the opportunity to mentor, that public service is a high priority. Lastly, I just want to say I fell in love with Tony many years ago, not only because of his good looks and Brooklyn swagger, but also because of his powerful, palpable, and unwavering commitment to caring for the whole person, caring for others, and making the world a safer, healthier place. To this day, we remain solid partners.
Like you said earlier, this is all scripted, but we'll continue here.
In this endeavor. Thank you for this honor.
Thank you for the honor,
And I
though, they
think
say to the Jesuits.
not only are you exemplary by your work, but what a wonderful example of a lifelong love and dedication to each other. That's a very beautiful thing. And now I would love to present you with the award.
Here we go.
Wow.
With gratitude
So we see it on the screen here, George.
to God, the USA East Province of the Society of Jesus is pleased to present the 2021 Ad Majorem Dei Gloriam Award to Dr. Anthony Fauci and Dr. Christine Grady, whose dedication to public health care over many years exemplarized the faithfulness toward Cura Personalis. Given on this day, the 20th of May, 2021.
Yeah, and for Gematria guys in the comments, let me know if there's any significance to the date May 20th, when Fauci and his wife, Christine Grady, received the Ad Majorem Dei Gloriam Award here by the Jesuits.
God bless you both.
Thank you so much, Father.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, so there you go. So there's the press conference, and I'll link this video in the description so people can see. This is like a 40-minute live stream here. They interview Father Leo O'Donovan, SJ, here seen on the right. He gave the invocation ceremony at the swearing in at the inauguration of current Roman Catholic President Joe Biden, January 20th, 2021, a date of 201 numerology. So it looks like they interview O'Donovan, and they reference they ask him questions about that invocation here. So I recommend everyone check this out. This is from the Jesuiteast.org website. Wait, do you want to go into some of the Pfizer, or do you want to add on that, or do you start going to the Pfizer stuff?
Okay, before I get into Pfizer, well, I know that May the 20th is, I believe, the 140th day of the year. If you write it out, this is something I picked up from Zach, that zeros don't mean anything. So if you drop the zero, 520, that's how we write it in the US, and that's 52. 52. Like 52 cards in a deck. And I'm sure there has
Well,
to
that's
be
interesting.
some-
Actually, George, I'm getting one here. A commenter saying that on 325 AD, the first Council of Nicaea began on May 20th.
Mhm.
That'd be
Okay.
that'd be a good symbolic honor. That's when kind of like church and state was formed together.
Okay, for what it's worth,
Constantine. Oh yeah, the first Council of Nicaea officially opened May 20th. You see, was a council of Christian bishops convened in the Bithynian city of Nicaea, modern day Turkey, by Roman Emperor Constantine in 325 AD.
Okay, for what it's worth, this is a stretch. I know the actor Jimmy Stewart, James Maitland Stewart, was born on that date in 1908 in Indiana, Pennsylvania. Now, Stewart, he died, well, you were like one or so. He died in 1997. So you probably don't remember him. He was in It's a Wonderful Life back in the 40s, and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Now, he ostensibly was a Protestant. He grew up Presbyterian. But I'm sure, okay, but I had to look in more into the significance of May the 20th, besides being the convening dates for the Council of Nicaea. Anyhow, so they like giving their acolytes to their puppets. They like giving them the glory, the greater glory of God, or wherever it is in Latin, the sort of Loyola, whatever, knighthoods, and so if people, I don't mean to bring up the religious element of this, because I'm primarily concerned about the temporal / secular. But if people cannot see the hands of the whore all over this machination, they're blind. Even if you're not religious, even if you're an atheist or agnostic or a non-Christian, how can you possibly not see all the papal connections? We've talked at great lengths about Anthony Fauci. We talked about the fact that Donald Trump was trained by the Jesuits and most of his children were. We talked about the fact that the current U.S. President Joe Biden, he received at least 2 Catholic honor degrees from University of St. Joseph's in Philly, University of Scranton. His son Hunter got his undergrad degree from Georgetown.
I believe the current WHO, Dr. Tedros.
Yes, he's Roman. Actually, he's not a medical doctor. Tedros Adhanom.
He's a Marxist. I guess he worked with the Tigrayan Marxist Party in Ethiopia.
Yes, and he's a Roman Catholic. He's had at least one papal audience, most recently with Francis.
Yeah, here's a photo of that on the screen, George. I got this on my website. I got the press release from the WHO website, October 23rd, 2018. There's the photo.
Okay.
Everyone should read you see how much of a puppet Roman Catholic Tedros is in this post.
Okay. Let's just talk about some of the major puppets in the world. You have Gavin Newsom, the current governor of California, University of Santa Clara. Andrew Cuomo, the now ex-governor of New York, got his undergrad degree from Fordham. The current governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, she got her law degree from Catholic University. Her husband, Bill, got his undergrad degree from Notre Dame.
Well, I didn't think it was worse, George. Like I said, that shows how the getting rid of Cuomo was all mastered by the Jesuits, because they're able to put in a bigger tyrant after Cuomo left. And of course, Hochul, like you said, is devout Catholic.
Now, if we talk about the so-called land down under, now just for clarification, Australia, like the United States, is organized into states. However, they don't call them governors. They actually have governors and premiers. In Canada, you have provinces. The head of your province is called the premier. So you're like our governors. Well, if you look at how many premiers in Australia are Catholic, you have Dan Andrews, who is, I believe, in Victoria, if I'm not mistaken. You have the head of Queensland, who's Polish. Angela, something, I forgot her name. She's Roman Catholic. So you have Michael Gunner, who's the head of Northern Territories, who's Roman Catholic. So you're talking about 3 or 4 different premiers who are Roman.
Well, and it's the Northern Territories where they have that quarantine camp, right?
Yes, that's in the Solomon Islands.
They'll take you from your house without due process, even if you're buzzed on like the contact trace app. If you're notified that you're a close contact, the military will show up to your house and take you to a government facility. Yes.
Now there's been an almost complete media blackout about what's going on in the Northern Territories of Australia. you're talking the Solomon Islands. So you're talking about Aborigines. So what we call here in the States or even Canada, they used to call indigenous people or American Indians. So they're expendable in the eyes of the Jesuits. They're analogous to the Maoris in New Zealand. So so who cares? Their attitude is, well, who cares who happens? I don't have this attitude. Is well, they're expendable, and who cares what happens to them? But I have seen a few videos from Aborigines in Australia said, wait, we're being genocided. We're being forced to receive this poke. We're being compelled to take medicine or drugs that we don't want or need. And we have no legal recourse. We have no habeas corpus. We can't appear in front of a judge. We can't sue anybody. All because of a bogus emergency. Now, I forgot the numbers. In Australia, allegedly less than 2,000 people have died from this illness in almost 2 years out of a population of 25 million people. And they probably engage in all sorts of skullduggery and chicanery to come with those numbers. In her near neighbor, New Zealand, which has a population of about 5 million people, less than 100 people have died allegedly in 2 years. So even if there were a real airborne contagious pathogen, in both countries, virtually nobody has died according to their fraudulent numbers. I'm not going to get into the whole germ versus brain theory debate because that's another conversation altogether.
Well, George, I would say another key Roman Catholic puppet right now in the geopolitical arena is Carrie Lam in Hong Kong. She's kind of overseeing the destruction of democracy in Hong Kong and bringing in the Chinese national security law. Do you see that they just had a patriots only election that had only 30% voter turnout? Because to be a patriot only is someone that's totally a subordinate, docile puppet of the Chinese Communist Party.
Well,
so they're not. So they're taking out all dissent. They've criminalized. Protest is criminalized now in Hong Kong. The press has been totally censored and taken over by the CCP. But Carrie Lam is the CEO of Hong Kong while this is going. She's openly like a puppet. Lots of media coverage out there showing how she's a lapdog of the CCP. Well, it's not, but her connections to the Vatican aren't brought up as much. She's a devout Roman Catholic. She was educated at an elite school run by nuns in Hong Kong. And she's the one it's very fitting that she's the one in charge of the destruction of representative democracy in Hong Kong, devout Catholic Carrie Lam. And I'd say I got this guy on the screen here. Another huge Roman Catholic puppet right now in the geopolitical arena is the current UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. Devout Roman Catholic. He got an honorary PhD from the Jesuits at Georgetown. He's actually referred to as a civil Pope Francis in numerous articles. He got the Charlemagne Prize, the Roman Charlemagne Prize in 2019. And again, the Charlemagne Prize is given out in Aachen, Germany, where the relic of Saint Corona is at the Aachen Cathedral. Saint Corona, the patron saint of pandemics. But Guterres, he's another huge one here, the UN Secretary General.
Okay, so I realize we're getting a little bit short on time. If I could just mention the executive leadership of Pfizer. This is something I wish I probably would have brought up a year ago, but better late than never. So one of the key figures for Pfizer, there are at least three key figures for Pfizer. One is Bill Carapezzi. He
got him up on the screen right now, George.
He got his undergrad degree from Fairfield University in Fairfield, Connecticut. Another key figure.
I'd say for the viewers aren't aware, that's Jesuit.
Now, that was basically one of the command centers for the. There was an event that took place there back in 2012, which we the Sierra Hotel, SH. That was basically the command center for that event. You know what I'm talking about?
At Fairfield University?
December the 14th, 2012. involving
Oh,
26.
yeah, the SHOOK shooting.
Yes.
Yeah, that the SH hook just happened to be a few miles from Fairfield University, just coincidentally.
Yes. Okay. Another key figure for Pfizer is Frank DeMelio. He went to St. Peter's University in New Jersey, which is, I believe, in Jersey City, Jersey. Was his
Okay, and I
Jesuit.
got him up on the screen. And George, just to reiterate, Bill Carapezzi, Jesuit trained at Pfizer, is the current executive vice president of global business services and transformation at Pfizer. And the name you just brought up, Frank D'Amelio, as I'll let you keep going here, is his position. He's the chief financial officer, so the CFO and the executive vice president of global supply.
Now, the chief compliance, quality, and risk officer is Ratty Johnson. He got his law degree from Georgetown University.
Compliance
So, speaking of compliance, or rather non-compliance, something that was not in my folder was the current governor of Rhode Island, Dan McKee. I guess last week he issued an executive order of authorizing fines of $500 for businesses that are not complying with his edicts, requiring people to cover their face and to put a poke in their arm. Restaurants and other types of establishment must demand proof that people who are coming into their establishments must comply with his orders. Now, for what it's worth, McKee was born in 1951, I believe June the 15th. He got his undergrad degree from Assumption College in Worcestershire, Mass. So they're doing this in all these jurisdictions in the U.S. and other places, but specifically in America: San Francisco, San Jose, New Orleans, New York City, Boston, Mass, Chicago, Seattle, Los Angeles, just to name a few. And who runs all those communities?
The Jesuits.
And they're puppets.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Full
San
spectrum.
Francisco-
I'd say full spectrum dominance control.
Yes. Now, for what it's worth, the mayor of San Francisco is London Brady. She got her master's degree from University of San Francisco in business, I believe. Just down the road, you have the town of San Jose, California. The mayor there is Sam Liccardo. He got his undergrad degree from Georgetown University, and we went to Bellarmine Prep in San Jose. San Jose has become the first municipality in America to require boosters for municipal employees or people going into buildings owned by the city of San Jose. That's supposed to take in effect by February.
And of course, the
So-
San Jose mayor is educated by Jesuits. Who's requiring the booster?
Yes.
Sam
And of course-
Liccardo. And of course, Jesuit Georgetown University. I don't think we mentioned this today, George. Georgetown University became one of the first universities in America to mandate the booster for all students, faculty, staff, and visitors to the school. That goes into effect January 2021.
So just a few weeks from now. Or you're talking about January the 20th. So you're talking just less than a month from now.
Yeah,
And
just less than a month. Yeah, Georgetown will have that booster mandate. And you see your mayor of San Jose who got his bachelor's in government from Jesuit Georgetown University.
and he went to Bellarmine Prep prior to that.
Right here, Bellarmine Prep, named after Saint Robert Bellarmine, prominent Jesuit.
Now, among other things, Bellarmine, I believe his dates were 1642 to 1521. He basically articulated the idea that there's just one. The whole idea of Antichrist is a single individual, which was a countervailing view of the Reformers, which was the papacy was the Antichrist. Now, that is something that is taught almost exclusively in all putative Protestant churches today, particularly Pentecostals, Baptists, and so forth, is that the Antichrist is just one man who's only going to be reigning on the earth for either 7 or 3.5 years. So most churches that call themselves Protestant or Evangelical or whatever are wittingly or otherwise teaching Counter-Reformation Jesuitical theology.
So yeah, futurism that goes back to the Jesuits with the Ribera,
Yes.
Francisco Ribera, I believe, right? For
So,
Francisco, he's credited Spanish Jesuit theologian identified with the futurist Christian eschatological view. And Georgia, before we sign off here, I found this kind of just shows the same spirit of this is the spirit that the Jesuits and their puppets are emanating into the world right now. But you have Michael O'Leary, CEO of Ryanair. This is one of the biggest airlines in the Europe, especially. It's the biggest one in Ireland by far. Ryanair. Michael O'Leary, CEO of Ryanair, was educated by Jesuits at Clonglows Woods College there in Ireland. He says that Jesuit trained Michael O'Leary, CEO of Ryanair, has declared that anyone who remains unvaccinated should be completely cut off from society, including not being allowed to travel, go to the supermarket to get food, or the pharmacy to get medicine. Of course, it's a Jesuit educated airline CEO, Michael O'Leary, CEO of Ryanair, that's saying this. So the examples are endless. But we could keep going for hours and hours and hours.
Well, if I could just mention some things of a local nature. As I said, I live in Cotati, California, which is Sonoma County, about roughly an hour or so north of San Francisco. The Sonoma County has a population of about 500,000 people, so we're about a size jurisdiction. But the amount of hegemony the Jesuits have in this county is breathtaking. And I probably said this before, and so forgive me for repeating myself. The current district attorney for Sonoma County is Jill Ravage. She got her law degree from the University of San Francisco. Now, she just retired. Another lady, Kathleen Posey, she just retired. She got her undergrad degree from the University of San Francisco. The head of the Health and Human Services Department is a lady by the name of Angela Struckman. She got her master's degree from the University of San Francisco. One of the members of the Board of Supervisors is Chris Kersey. He went to Regis High School in Aurora, Colorado, which is a suburb of Denver. The Office of Chief Legal Counsel for the county is Robert Pittman. He got his law degree from Loyola Marymount, Los Angeles. The Assistant Office of Legal Counsel and the Administrator for the county is Cheryl Bratton. She got her law degree from the University of San Francisco. And those are just county officials. I'm not talking about municipal employees for places like Santa Rosa or Petaluma. So is that breathtaking?
Oh, absolutely. It is breathtaking how much they control California. It's shocking. Well, the thing of the Bay Area, don't they have all three mayors, Oakland, San Jose, and San Francisco, openly Jesuit trained?
Yes. Just
San Jose, Sam Licardo, Jesuit trained at Georgetown and Bellarmine. London Breed, Jesuit trained at San Francisco, University of San Francisco. What was the Oakland mayor?
Libby Shaw. She got her law degree from Loyola Marymount, Los Angeles.
Wow. So that's all three big cities in the wow. In the whole Bay Area, all the big cities.
Wow. Now, for what it's worth, London Breed has been caught at least 3 times in the last 2 years not complying with their own edicts. She's been seen going to clubs, without a mask on and things, drinking, engaging, and doing karaoke, singing, things like that. And of course, what these athletes, they have 2 sets of rules: one for thee and one for me. Yes, suffocate yourself. Don't open up your business, things like that. But hey, when the cameras are off, I can do whatever I want. Now, remember, you obviously did at least one video when Joe Biden got together with Francis. Biden was there for hours on end. They're shaking hands. Nobody was wearing a mask. They're obviously, less than 6 feet apart. So wait a second. Does that mean the Corona hoax can't get you if you're in the Vatican or something? Does it know? Oh, I want to have respect for His Holiness. I'll say all the doors.
Yeah, I guess there's a force field around the Vatican that keeps the spike proteins out from the CV-19.
Yes, and of course it's just
Like
like
I'm sure George, all the money from the Vatican Bank has to be going somewhere. I guess that's where they're investing it in
to
that.
build. Well, and of course this is ridiculous because here, I mean, Sonoma County was the first jurisdiction in America to oppose the mask mandate. That was implemented in April of 2020, almost 2 years ago. It was in effect from mid-April to June the 15th, and then again, they reimposed in early August because they have all these people who are getting sick. Now, as I said before, Sonoma County has a population of 500,000 people. Now, in almost 2 years, something like just over 40 people have allegedly died of the COVID, of the CV-19 or whatever you want to call it. Well, no, well, they're probably dying from the poke of last year, and before that, they're dying for what people normally die of. Because, gee, I don't see the ambulances running and the hearse running down the streets morning, noon, and night. I don't see people dropping dead in the street. And last I heard, the ambulances haven't had a problem with being able to bury the bodies quickly enough. And if this illness is so deadly and so contagious, why do they have to test you for it?
Well,
Why is it all?
Klaus Schwab himself, the Jesuit Klaus Schwab himself, who's often at the Vatican, in his book CV-19, The Great Reset, he actually says that CV-19 is one of the most least deadly pandemics in history. But we still can't ever go back to normal, though. He says in the same book, like these are permanent changes.
Well,
we have to bring in the fourth industrial revolution, of course.
no, we still have these idiotic and satanic rules that you have to. I haven't worn one once, but if you go into a restaurant, you have to wear that thing on your face until you get to your seat. But you can take it off, when you're eating, because I guess just like it being the Vatican, the alleged virus is very respectful. It won't bother you while you're eating and drinking. But once you get up to leave, you're off base. You need to put it back on. Um, these rules are not based in law. They have zero basis in law and even less basis in science. Over the last 2 years, here in the United States, and I'm sure this is the case in Canada and other countries, is that this disease is so deadly and so contagious. Like you had to destroy almost all small businesses, especially restaurants. However, you're safe if you go to Walmart, Costco, and other corporate box stores. Those have never shut down. Also, these thugs, these politicians, and these unelected apparatchiks, such as your health officers or unhealth officers, as they're more accurately called, have not missed one paycheck. Now, I was cataloging all the thugs who we have running our county. The ex-health director was a lady by the name of Barbara Robinson. She got her master's degree from Georgetown University. Now, she retired in May of this year to move to Harris County, Texas, where she's now the health officer there. Now, so she's gone from terrorizing the citizens of Sonoma County to terrorizing the citizens of Harris County, Texas, which is where Houston is. And they have 5 times the population, or rather 10 times the population. We have 500,000.
Well, that's the Jesuits giving her a promotion then, George.
Yes. Now, she retired at the age of 51 this year at full retirement. So she can put in another 20 plus years in Texas and get a retirement from them. Now, not only that, that was bad enough, but to further exacerbate the situation, her base salary for 2020 was supposed to be $200,000, which is exorbitant. You're not quite talking Tony Fauci number. However, the Board of Supervisors decided to give her a $100,000 bonus for being a good thug.
Taxpayer funded, right?
Yes. So she got to retire as this year at the age of 51 and moved to a different state where she can get another retirement. And of course, that here's a little factoid. Almost all these health officers and health directors have some sort of nexus with the World Health Organization, the CDC, or both. For example, Now, I mentioned Robinson was the health director. Sundari Mace is the health officer. She used to work for the World Health Organization and was on the board of directors for the CDC. About 10 years ago, or it was like 5 years ago, Mace was involved with the tuberculosis immunization program in India. So I'm not sure how many Indians she murdered or got sick. But you see, it's just like you have to like show levels of loyalty. That if you're willing to commit just a little bit of treason and mass murder, they'll reward you with a higher position. You can
Well,
engage in.
that's why Fauci's the new J. Edgar Hoover. He's been in his
Yeah.
position over 40 years. Hoover committed countless acts of treason for the Jesuits. Big one covering up the John F. Kennedy murder. You could do a whole show just on J. Edgar Hoover. Cardinal Richard Cushing famously said of Hoover that when Hoover speaks, it's like the Pope has spoken.
Yes, or you can talk about.
Fauci, I found this great soundbite a couple days ago. RFK Jr. referred to Fauci, as the Pope.
Mhm.
His principal investigators or PIs as the bishops, archbishops, and cardinals. But the fact that Fauci, like Hoover, and Hoover famously, George, had like a list of blackmail. Like he had blackmail notes on like every prominent official in Washington that he would threaten to release if anyone were trying to remove him from his position.
Well, of course,
I'm sure it's that same dynamic here with Fauci, but you see like that same duration. The puppets that last, 40 plus years are the ones that have sold out the most to the whore. Like Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi will be drooling on the bench by the time her seat is gone. Like by the time her seat is filled by a new candidate, she'll be in office for 50 plus years. Just like that Jesuit educated Dingle in Michigan. He had his seat for 50 plus years.
Mm-hmm. And don't forget Fidel Castro. He was there for like over half a century.
Absolutely, Jesuit Fidel Castro, and you could say Jesuit Francisco Franco.
Yeah,
half a century.
Well, yes, and of course, it's just like so whether you're talking about government, the military, medical, law enforcement, the judge, people are given these reins for decades on end, not because they're competent. It's just that it's because they're compromised, they're controlled, they're corrupt, and it's just like if this really had anything to do with public health, and that's a ludicrous concept in and of itself. But let's say there is a valid concept of public health. If this had anything to do with that, they would have shut down all the fast food restaurants. They would have stopped the sale of junk food, especially soda. They would have They would not have shut down the gyms. Now, the gyms that have survived are still reopened here in California, but you still had to work. You had to suffocate yourself. And now they're going to have in many jurisdictions, like San Francisco, like San Jose, like LA, you have to furnish proof of the poisoning in order to use their services. And, speaking of the whole idea of public health, as I said, that's ludicrous because there's no such thing. I'm responsible for my own health, for what I eat or drink or don't eat or drink, how much exercise I engage in, when I go to bed, that sort of stuff. Now, there is a valid concept of public sanitation, which entails garbage collection, sewage treatment, water purification. But the whole idea of the government being responsible for health is oxymoronic. So when has the U.S. government or any other government, state or Canadian, whatever, been concerned about the well-being of its citizens?
Well, George, I think this is a good place to finish off. I just got to get going here shortly, but we know the first historical vaccine mandate in history came from the Vatican. Came from Pope Pius the Seventh in the Papal States.
Now, did he recreate the Jesuits?
Yeah, he's the same Pope that reconsecrated the Jesuits after they were in that suppression period. Pius VII. Look this up. VII vaccine. I know I have a link here on Jesuit World Order for it. Here's from Vatican News. Vaccines for everyone, for the poor. Examples from Pius VII and Pius IX. Here it was 1822. Edward Jenner, as we mentioned before, a high-level Freemason and Royal Society member. Edward Jenner, the father of modern immunization, who created the smallpox VAXX, was still alive when the Papal States, under the leadership of Pius VII, activated a massive VAXX campaign. This is the first mass VAXX campaign in history. So I recommend people check out this here.
Okay, so just want to end on two things. Have you ever looked into the Spanish flu of roughly 100 years ago and the similarities between it and now?
Yeah, I've done that. I have to do more, in particular on Spanish flu. Yeah, but I have done a fair bit of research on the Spanish flu.
Okay, so there's a couple works I would
Yeah,
recommend.
I'd say the same. I don't think they used it to the same extent, but yeah, they used like the the hysteria of masking and all of that. I have seen evidence of that from back then.
Okay, so there was like some serious pushback on the whole masking thing. As a matter of fact, people who were non-compliant were called slackers, like mask slackers and things like that. But as I said, in my humble opinion, and I've said this before, that was Spanish flu was a dry run for now. They used other episodes like the Hong Kong flu of the 50s. I'm sorry, of the late 1960s, the Hong Kong flu of the 1950s, so forth. But they had other things they had to accomplish before they implemented what's going on right now. And of course, they had to control the media, whatever was available at the time, which was the major media outlet back then were the newspapers. So they had to have absolute hegemony of the press. And you're talking really, I mentioned William Randolph Hearst, who was a Knight of Malta. So they had to convince the people that there's a scary airborne contagious pathogen, and they had to listen. They had to listen to all the health experts, the Tony Fauci's of their day, whoever it was, and of course, you had to. And I would love to continue this, but unfortunately, I need to sign off. So, shall I give my contact information for anybody who'd like to get in touch with me?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, feel free to give out your contact info. Definitely.
Okay. Well, I don't have a website, but people can send me an email at George Widger, GeorWidger1969 If people have any questions or comments or complaints, and if they didn't get that, they can get it from you. You can forward it on to them.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if people want George's contact information also, yeah. Just reach out to me as well. I have your info on my email here.
And
yeah,
of course,
do you want to give that again though, just in case people missed that?
Okay, George. Okay, George, GeorWidger 1969 @gmail.com. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, complaints, critiques, if you want to send me something like an article or video, if there's a topic you would like me to cover with Eric or go over again. Also, please just tell me a little bit about yourself. Where you're from, how long you've been listening, things like that. And I do need to sign off, and I'll talk to you soon. And Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year, George. I appreciate the great chat today.
Okay, well, talk to you soon.
I'll talk to you soon, George. I'll keep in touch. Take care. And we see you guys before we sign off. Here's the source from this VAXX mandate on the Jesuit World Order blog. Nick found this here. He put it up 9 months ago. The post titled First International Mandatory VAXX Policy was created by the Vatican from the papal encyclical Ephemerdes Leterae, translation the Edict on Compulsory VAXX, June 20th, 1822, by Pope Pius VII, the same pope who reinstituted the Jewish ghettos invented by Rome and who reestablished the Jesuit order in 1841. And Nick links this source from Italian where you can actually read the entire papal bull. You see the original text of the Edict on Compulsory VAXX from Pope Pius VII. So I recommend you check that out there. See that the Central VAXX Commission that was set up in the Papal States operates very similarly to the U.S. Coronavirus White House Task Force. And of course, the White House at the U.S. Capitol, named after Jesuit priest Andrew White, S.J., the Apostle of Maryland. He began his trip across America on November 22nd. He set sail to America, an anniversary date of the John F. Kennedy assassination. Even more proof of the Jesuit hand in the murder of Kennedy. They picked a symbolic date the Jesuits did to murder John F. Kennedy, being the same date that Andrew White sailed from England to America. You see Andrew White, English Jesuit missionary, known as the Apostle of Maryland. The White House is named after him. It's not because it's a white building, and that's why you have a Roman fasces right in the Oval Office at the White House. It's right in front of the president's desk, the big Roman fasces. Yeah, I think that's all for this one, YouTube. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Yeah, I'm going to be doing more streams here with George. I want to get another stream set up also with Johnny Cerrucci, Zach Hubbard, a bunch of other guys too. Alex, I want to do another stream with at some point soon. Nick and Goods. So yeah, expect more streams sometime soon. And thanks guys for tuning in. And I'll catch you on the next one.